hello, everybody. I'm seriously proud of myself today. I got to tell you, I could do this all by myself. Morné sitting in the back room celebrating.
You're a techno
Really
wizard.
ready to be there.
You're a techno wizard, Chantelle.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think I'm such a techno whiz. It's like the miracle of the day for me.
Oh,
Actually, this today as well. So it's like 2 days running now I'm able to do this miracle. The thing is, I mean, it's just like I get so single-minded, especially when I'm talking to someone. And it's like very difficult for me if I've got to break and suddenly do some gadgets, then I just get confused. But anyway, I'm very happy to be doing the gadgets at the beginning and the end. So.
That's how I feel.
Well, yay.
If I look at the chat,
sorry?
the comments, I said if I look at the comments or the chat, I can't function because then I get all wrapped up in the chat, you know.
Yeah, I'm the same. You know, it's like normally I'm a pretty good multitasker, but when it comes to focusing and chatting and talking and stuff like that, it's difficult. Anyway, Alice Pirola, welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And welcome to our amazing viewers. Very happy to see you guys again. Again with Alice, who's on with us every second Tuesday now. And again, just to give you a little recap, Alice is one of our overcomers who's been diagnosed borderline personality disorder, went through a whole story with her family and her daughter. So for those of you who haven't caught those interviews yet, really, I want to highly recommend you do. And now on her journey to healing and, what she's experienced along with her family and the healing they've done as a family, which is really beautiful to witness. So very happy to have you guys with us, Alice. Well, tonight you, but and also just it's wonderful to see the work you're doing now, and how you're able to help people just take away those horrible labels of mental disorders. It's really something that we need to embrace and understand. And realize that, it comes from oftentimes some very traumatic and tragic roots. So just to be compassionate, towards ourselves, because honestly, whether we are diagnosed borderline personality or histrionic or whatever it is, right? All of us have a little bit of crazy in us. There's not even a question around that. I tell you what, sometimes I can feel like a sociopath for all of 10 minutes as well. Until I go, hang on, just catch your emotions, don't react. This is not something to react about. And really, I think, so all of us have a little bit of something that goes on. We're all just mirrors and reflections for each other.
I always say everybody has a little bit of mental illness.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. That's what it is to be human. I do believe that's what it is to be human. We go through the ups and the downs. We're here to learn about betrayal. We're here to learn about truth. Really, truth is the opposite of betrayal. So it's the polarization of that. So what is the truth about the betrayal? And it's very difficult when we are in that and we can't discern. And that's exactly where I think so many of us get caught up and we become destructive and, self-destructive and destructive to those around us, end up in horrible places where they do horrible things, And I think the more of us who just own this and can understand that it's nothing to be ashamed of, to talk about it, to share it with your family, someone you trust first. Maybe see a therapist and say, wow, I watched this program and I think that I have a little bit of that. What do you think? Just take those steps slowly. You're the only one who can take your steps towards healing. Others can try and force you and tell you that you are 20 different brands of crazy or whatever it is. That doesn't make you so. I've been told I'm crazy all my life. I accept I'm always crazy. I accept that and it's actually quite nice because it kind of gives me permission to be crazy, right?
I remember I had
everyone thinks I'm crazy, that I get permission to be crazy, and that's awesome.
I had a doctor once. I said to him, well, I'll tell you, I have borderline personality disorder. And he's like, that's the only kind of women I date.
Oh, yeah, high five, baby. Are you free for dinner tomorrow?
That's the women I like to date. So yeah, it's
oh, that's funny.
not funny,
Yeah,
but you have to laugh or you cry, and you cry a lot. So you know,
absolutely.
you have to laugh and cry.
So laughter is definitely the best medicine. I tell you, if we can find something to laugh at least five times a day, even in your most depressed state, you will start getting yourself out of that depression. And that's how, you know, in my times, I must say, where I've been low, dealing with some stuff, I would watch kitten videos, cute kittens, or cute animals, because it would bring up such a beautiful feeling in me, and I would just start chuckling and laughing, and immediately just that feeling of laughing and enjoying something and just getting your mind away from whatever the heaviness it is that you're trying to process, because we all process things differently. Exactly. We're all going to process it uniquely in our own way. And I think that's one of the things we must realize about ourselves. We're not the same as anyone else. You know, all of us are unique. So we can really just take guidelines from those experts or those in the know. But we really have to take those guidelines, apply them to our own unique situation, and use what works and discard that which doesn't work.
Amen.
So,
amen to that.
Yeah, it's something that we all kind of, you know, it's our own personal journey. And I think that's the beauty of life at this time, you know, that we never before, think about it, in medieval times or in the times of Christ or whenever, people were not in the place of seeking. They were not seekers. They were, you know, they were told about stuff and they accepted that, right?
That is very true. Yeah,
exactly. And as we've evolved over time, we have started seeking more of who we are. So we've kind of gone deeper in, who am I?
Self-reflection internal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that in itself, I mean, is part of our progress as human beings, right? So now that we start looking deeper within, we can start taking responsibility for our own happiness. We don't need to be subjected to someone else's whip and chain, whether it's a slave master or a partner or a parent or a whatever. You know, we realize we all have the ability to have the Holy Spirit in us. And when we access the Holy Spirit, I mean, we don't have the ability, we all have it in us. That's what I meant to say. And we also have the ability to access that. And we need to discover those abilities. And that's the journey. That's the beauty. That's the amazing thing about being spiritual. It's not airy-fairy. It's not about hugging trees and kissing crystals. It's, you know, it's about a deep sense of connection to God or your divine creator, you know. So when you have that and you start exploring your inner world, you discover things about yourself you never, ever began to even realize were there. And then suddenly all these things on the outside just start paling, you know. It's like, oh my God, I was crying about you. Are you mad? You know? All right. Okay, I see now where I went wrong. You know, that's kind of what we start doing, and we start making better choices for ourselves.
That's
and
true.
We start, you know, and we start doing better with better knowledge. And that is such an exciting thing, because I think more than anything, this now is the sign of those times that we are on the path of self-discovery. We're seeking, we're discovering who we are. And it's new for a lot of people. And we're stumbling and falling, and we're laughing and crying, and all of us are realizing we're all a little bit fucked up, you know, and that's okay. That's okay. It's beautiful, actually, you know. Let's all just be a little bit fucked up together. I'm happy to do that. You know?
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's so great. That's so great.
Yeah.
Shanti, today, if we could invite the audience to jot down questions, ask questions, just really have them participate on this material.
Absolutely.
I don't want to just be, reading it and just going through it, because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings. And our topic today is the 4 different types of BPD, borderline personality disorder.
Yeah.
And
I very interested to be looking at that. And I was going to say, so if there's anyone here in our audience that has questions around this, because we are going to be covering the 4 borderline and the 5th maybe a borderline personality disorder types, which would be your impulsive, discouraged, self-destructive, and petulant. And then we also have the histrionic one, which is really what you were saying, goes hand in hand. It's more like the sister. It's not the same as the others, but it's the sister to borderline personality disorder.
The sister disorder to borderline personality.
Yeah.
I just want to give a shout out. My younger brother is in the chat for the first time.
Is that B. Peter?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Hello, brother.
Say hello.
Yeah, you see, you're making a lot of people proud and happy, and not just your family. I think there's a lot of people. I know you've already been working with quite a few people since we've opened up this platform. And I want to encourage you guys, if you have anything that you suspect within yourself, with your partner, been living with it, had parents with it, been subjected to something like this, and reach out to Alice and
absolutely
as well as people who've been through it. And I truly believe once you've been through something and come out on the other side, you have the skills to help somebody else through that. That's absolutely true.
It's true. So, it's absolutely true. Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, I'm going to start within the first one. So why don't you tell us what impulsive personality disorder is?
Okay. Well, impulsive is the one that most young borderlines have. Borderline is typically diagnosed when you're in your teens. They wait until you're at least 15, 16 to diagnose you formally, because the thing is they can't tell whether or not coming up it's other things. They have to go through there's 9 criteria, which I won't go through all the criteria today. I'm just going to speak to the 4 different types plus histrionic. But you can't formally be introduced into BPD until you're in your teens. And so what it is, and I'm just reading off the list here, and I'm sorry for that, forgive me, but people with impulsive BPD, that was exactly what I was when I was a teenager. And it's charismatic, energetic. You can be elusive and detached, very flirtatious, engaging, motivating. And some examples of behavior are binging behaviors, binge eating, overspending. It could be anorexia, risky and self-destructive behaviors, unprotected sex, sex with multiple partners, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, drinking alcohol or taking drugs to excess, doing illicit drugs, gambling addiction. And the aggressive behavior that you display at that time is outbursts, physical fights, breaking things, hitting things, yelling fits. So I want you to really take that in. Physical fights, outbursts, breaking things, hitting things, destroying things. It's a very self-destructive path. Now, unfortunately,
it's not just a teenage. I mean, every teenager, I think, goes through a stage where they rebel and they're gonna give you a little hissy fit and attitude and what have you, right?
This is not a hissy fit. This is a full-on, in your face meltdown.
I would like to maybe at this point, let's say we have parents that are dealing with teenagers at this stage who, let's say, are potentially heading in that way or showing signs of that. So what would be then a sign for parents to understand that this is now not just a normal teenage tantrum anymore? And another thing I noticed there, so that would be my first question. And number two is that obviously sexual deviant behavior is a very clear indicator that the child has been sexually tampered with. So the minute I would say, and I've noticed this in 20 years of working with people, if a child has sexually deviant behavior, you know, and I'm not just talking about a normal crush or whatever, but in that way, there would always be a sexual type of molestation or abuse that has occurred within the family. So I'm going to, or to that child, not necessarily within the family, I'm going to say mostly, yes, but not all the time. And that would be the crux of everything. So all of the other stuff is really just part of the outburst, right?
Right.
And that would be the core of where anyone then would need to go and have a look, because flirtatious behavior, you've learned from a young age how to flirt with a man. Why would a teenage girl of 12 or 10 need to flirt with boys or a man, right? In a precocious way, beyond her time. I mean, I think of myself at that age, I was like, I like boys. I thought they were good looking, but that was about it. They didn't come near me.
Now, see, that's the age that I actually was flirtatious and I was sexually active, but I had not, had sex per se yet. And I got actually raped because of the fact that I set myself up for that. And so I was raped at the age of 12. And then from there, when I was in foster care, we all slept with everybody. We had sex with everybody. It was girls on girls and boys on boys and boys on girls. And, we would just sleep together in the same bed just to have a warm body to hold. But it's way beyond, I would call it a sexual addiction. I would say sexual addiction. Definitely, I started smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, marijuana when I was 12, 13. So, a lot of that stuff is coming in because you're trying to self-soothe. Yeah. Borderline is a very painful disorder. You feel things, your emotions. Marshall Linehan, who constructed dialectical behavioral therapy for borderline people, which is a type of therapy that helps regulate the brain and regulate the emotions. She said that it's like having 90-degree burns. I mean, third-degree burns over 90% of your body. Third-degree burns over 90% of your body. That's what it feels like when you're in an episode. And so when you're in that type of an episode, you'll do anything that you can to try to get that pain away. That's what you're trying to do desperately. So the number one thing is there'll be a lot of crying, hysteria. There'll be trashing rooms, trashing things, maybe wrecking a car, a lot of car accidents. You can't help but notice that child is always in trouble. Always in trouble. And my mother said she couldn't control me, which is why she gave me up to foster system when I came out about my father being a homosexual and a pedophile, because she just couldn't control me. She could not figure out how to work with me. Right.
So isn't that just, I would imagine that must have been even that much more terrifying for you, because then it was almost like that action was confirmation that you were not worthy and you were not good enough. So
Absolutely.
at the time, you know, all you're really crying for is love, affection, understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and someone to put their arms around you
Mm-hmm.
and take you away go away with your mom for a week on your own and just talk and cry and share and go for therapy and heal, right? That would have been something that would have been more constructive. But
Amen.
other than she couldn't handle you. You were out of control. You were a problem. You were a bad girl. You were all the things that you'd been made to feel, and now given to foster care. And then, of course, the only pleasure or satisfaction you could give someone that you knew of was sexually.
Mm-hmm.
So you then would have used what you knew pleased
Right.
someone else.
Right.
You would have known sexually you pleased your father or whoever it was you were engaging with or forced to engage with. So that becomes your subconscious language.
Absolutely. And it's the emotional connection that you're seeking, the love. You know, I'm working with a 37-year-old woman right now in England, and she has not come out of this type of impulsive BPD. And she is addicted to this man who treats her horribly. And all it is the sex. And, you know, she just keeps going back for the sex. He keeps dumping her, etc. It's a cycle. And we keep talking about it over and over again. And every time she goes back to him and she's like, he's not what I need him to be. And I said, I realize that. But in order for you to find that person, in order for you to move forward in this, you have to heal that inner child, that part of you that is starving. Starving for affection. So if any parents see their kids acting like this, these are huge signs something's up.
And that inner child wound, wow. We all have, and I'm actually busy writing a workshop at the moment on the inner child and woundology around that. So that's coming up soon, guys. I've really been guided to do some very profound and deep work regarding that. But what I want to say is that the inner child, one would think a little kid doesn't, you know, wield so much power, but my goodness, the wounded inner child will control your life in a heartbeat. That little inner child is not a child anymore. It is now obviously an adult in the body that you are, but has not begun to understand the emotions, so still reacts from the way a 2-year-old would or a 3-year-old would, but only now with so much more potency and strength and so much more sophistication. You know, now that these words and that can go along with those emotions that just get spewed out, and actions and punching and abuse and aggression just becomes tenfold. So it takes over you.
If it brings you into adulthood. If you go into adulthood with that, Shanti, you're going to end up in jail. You're going to end up with DUIs. You're going to end up with maybe drug possession, prostitution. There are so many things. This is why it's so hard for a family if it's not caught early on. It's so hard for a family to now have a 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old acting this way. Trust me, there are people in their 50s and 60s that are still displaying as an impulsive borderline because they never grew out of it.
Yeah.
They never grew out of it.
It's actually quite sad, especially when you see, and I noticed that, especially with men who have gotten older, they, you know, it's like they become, and if they've not found their happiness or their joy in life, you know, they become incredibly bitter or incredibly vicious, you know, or incredibly, but then of course you get the others. My dad was definitely one of those. He became, I mean, he was this great 6'6", we call him the gentle giant, you know, and he just became like much more loving. He's always been loving, but he was always, you know, he became much more loving, much more attentive, much more caring, you know. He really became an incredible nurturer at the end as well. Listened, understood, asked questions. You know, he got to know us all very
He
differently.
grew. You know, he
Yes,
developed.
yes,
So,
absolutely.
but the second type, does anybody have any questions in the chat about impulsive BPD? We should do that first.
There's okay. I want to just see sexual tendency is not the first thing I had. I would just want to see.
Lisa was arrested for
first.
shoplifting. Absolutely. I was the best shoplifter. Oh my word. Back in the 70s when they didn't have all the wonderful accoutrements they have now to catch you, I was shoplifting constantly, Lisa. And so, yeah, absolutely, shoplifting is one of the things. I'm just trying to see.
And yeah, we have Brianna. I call it 1,000 times disease or extremist. It's either really good or really bad, no in between. Yeah, I would imagine that. Mm-hmm. There's no gray areas, right?
Hence so the black and white.
Yeah.
Black and white. The splitting. The splitting. So the next type is very, very difficult. If you have a teenager that...
So there's just maybe one more comment. I'm not sure what this is. Not all of us as child act out poorly. If you're in a very controlled home, you cannot act out. There are severe actions for acting out. Therefore, yes, I was going to say that because there would be obviously those situations as well. And I think that is particularly prevalent and relevant in like SRA families, right? Mm-hmm. Where you are told, you are forced to have your posture, you say a word, your family gets killed, you know, you are threatened with the worst possible things. So I would imagine, absolutely. And that's why they have, I would imagine, so many of the SRA, they've had to split. You know, they've had to have different because that's how they kind of survive, right? So absolutely.
Even military families, military families, anything that is very strict, very structured, church families, religious families. That is my second one, which is discouraged BPD. Discouraged BPD is extremely suicidal. And this is known as the quiet borderline personality disorder. People with this type are afraid of being abandoned. They may take extreme actions to prevent real or imagined abandonment. And compared to the other types, these people keep their emotions locked inside. They keep it all inside. They're perfectionists. They're very successful. They're very high functioning. They feel alienated and detached in groups. They feel like they don't have a real strong bond with other people. They seek approval, but they also do a lot of self-isolation. They engage in much self-harm or suicidal behavior. They feel lonely and empty a lot of the time. And the signs of a discouraged BPD include clinginess, codependency, neediness, anger, emotional mood swings if abandoned. So this person is the exact flip opposite of the impulsive. This is the discouraged, quiet BPD. And they're holding they're like a time bomb. They're holding everything inside. And then a lot of times with the self-harming, you'll get a lot of suicide attempts, a lot of visits to the hospital. It's really a tragic path. All of them are. All the four types are.
And they don't really tell you what's wrong. So are you saying that this type is really the one that doesn't communicate? So they'll be in like severe depression. So that would be symptoms of like severe depression and being in that black hole where they can't really come out, right? Is that what you're saying?
But they're highly functioning. They're highly functioning and they're very successful. They're perfectionists. They're I don't want to say they are controlling to a certain point, but then what they'll do is they'll go self-isolate and then they'll self-harm. And they'll always do something to push someone to the edge of, do you love me? Do you not? And that will bring them to the case of self-harm or suicide attempts.
So would it be were those that also like blackmail? Well, if you leave me, I will kill myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's always, again, we're looking at the fear of abandonment, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'm just seeing a comment here by Lisa. Again, I'm just going to show this. Dissociation is also a hidden illness. I could leave my body in any threat. This caused multiple personality that began when I had my kids.
Yep. Dissociation is huge in this one, because the impulsive borderline, the first one, was acting out all the time. They're outward focused. This person is inward focused. And so what they're doing is they're dissociating because they can't cope. They can't deal with it. And so they would dissociate. And yes, they can. Now, DID, dissociative identity disorder, is a different type of illness, but it can be an adjunct to borderline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you split the personality, and then it's like, oh my gosh, now you have multiple personalities to deal with on top of the borderline.
Wow. That can only be tricky. Wow.
Tricky. I had I think I've mentioned before, but for those that haven't heard the shows before, I was in Mary Kay Cosmetics for 25 years, and I actually trained up people under me. At one point, I had 150 people on my team that I was training. I was a pink Cadillac driver. But the thing that happened was I did have one or two people in my group that were DID, dissociative disorder. And I would train and work with them and spend the whole afternoon. And then the next day, they didn't remember anything, and they were a different person, and they couldn't even, recall anything. And it was just really difficult to deal with. And so eventually they would spill the beans to me and tell me, I've got DID, I've got different personalities. So you may be talking to one person one day and one person the next. And so it was very difficult to work around that. Wow. It gets really crazy. So
yeah.
Does anybody have any questions on that one? Any more questions on discourage?
No, nothing more has come in. And then the next one would be the self-destructive. So what would be the self-destructive? I think that's kind of speaks for itself. But I mean, I think there's so many different levels of self-destruction, right?
This one, they struggle with an intense self-hatred. They're very bitter. They feel like the world has really done them dirty. And an example would be they're doing a lot of self-medicating with recreational drugs, prescription medications, alcohol. They are into, these are people that are adrenaline junkies. They are adrenaline seeking activities all the time. People with this type of BPD do these activities without even thinking about it or preparing for it. Symptoms of these and other conditions is these people, when they self-harm, they will cut, they will burn, they will scratch, they will bite, they will hit, they will punch. These people, they just have a death wish. It seems that they have a death wish. I think, in my personal opinion, a lot more men have this type of BPD. This is how it presents in a lot more male figures, that they will, ride the motorcycle at exorbitant speeds with no helmet. And, they're just adrenaline junkies, and they're very hard to control or manage in a relationship. they really can't have a relationship because they hate themselves so much. They're filled with bitterness and self-hatred. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that?
I'm trying to think about that, because I know a lot of skydivers, and I mean, I know like a lot of the skydivers are adrenaline junkies in many ways. Although one of my very good friends is one of the world's top skydivers and has
Oh,
been
wow.
for many, many years. Yet he's the kind of personality. He's a very wise soul. So he's not an adrenaline junkie per se. Like he won't like do. A lot of these people do this bridge jumping, you know, or base jumping, stuff like that. And I remember speaking to one of the guys when I was living in Thailand, because there was a new drop zone that just opened there. And like a really good looking Swedish dude. I'll never forget that, you know. And I was like, and I just looked at him and I could just see, you know, his energy was just shattered, you know. And I said to him, what's your story, you know? And I said, so why do you do this, you know? Because I always understand that these are, you know, what are you trying to fly away from, guys?
Yeah.
You know, he pretty much said to me, he said, well, so I can feel again. And that for me was so, I went, wow, okay. It's so self-explanatory, you know, so he can feel again. Obviously, he had these feelings that had been numbed up a lot. His emotions in his life experience, for whatever reasons, had been numbed up a lot. And he just wanted to feel and not walk around like a zombie. And that gave him his rush. So, and I think, and it's definitely because I think when you see a lot of people doing this very dangerous sports, it gives them that rush. It makes them feel alive, because any moment now something can happen and you're not going to be here anymore. So it kind of it's like that extreme sense of something. And again, what that would say to me is that these kids have had to deal with extremes in their formative years. You know, has it been physically acted on them in a conscious way, or are they just products of a very traumatic home life? You know, have they been tampered with? Have they been hurt? Have they been harmed? What makes someone not feel to that extent, that they feel they've got to jump off a bridge to feel like they're alive? You know what I'm saying?
And the fact is, Shanti, that they hate each other. They hate themselves so much that they can't, they just can't emote properly. They're very bitter. So, and you can go through these things are intertwined. You can have one part going on and then, you know, be impulsive and then be self-destructive, and you can flip back and forth. These are not just you're in this category and you stay there.
Would this be your typical narcissist?
Yes.
That we're looking at here. So someone who really has a battle opening up the heart chakra, because really that's what a narcissist is. If you look at it at the end of the day, something has happened that has shut their heart chakra down. So they don't operate from a place of empathy or love or understanding. When they feel pain, oh boy, when they're in emotional pain, they feel it. And, you know, they might not always express it, right? Verbally or even physically. It's almost like the daggers are stabbing from within. So they just go quiet and they numb themselves up, pretty much like this dude was telling me. And then they'll go and jump off bridges to feel alive.
Right.
So what would be the difference? Because a narcissist would typically be pretty manipulative, right? So would these personality types be pretty manipulative? No.
Actually, you can have narcissistic traits in borderline, but there's no category for narcissism in borderline.
Okay.
Okay.
But all the traits.
You can have traits of it, but they're not a full-blown narcissist because of the fact that you hate yourself so much. Narcissists don't hate themselves. They're self-grandiose. They just think
But
the
isn't
world.
that really? Because if we think about how people operate, let's think of human nature. I mean, they would have no doubt had someone bullying them, making them feel like crap on whatever level when they were, let's say, kids. So they pretend that they have this inflated ego, and generally would be very good looking, charismatic, as you say, successful jobs, working, got money. They're playing with all the toys because that's what gives them their sense of credibility. So the minute you take that away from them, and their castle comes tumbling down, you see a very different side to that person. You see within, they are actually terrified. They are actually so lonely, so scared that they've got to get lost in the crowd and make themselves out to be the super important person, which very often they can be in their industry. But take that away, and there's zero on the inside.
And again, that's the inner child that never grew up.
Yeah.
Most of these children that grow up to be self-destructive BPD were ignored. They were just completely ignored and discarded, really. And, they didn't grow up with any boundaries. They were allowed to do anything they wanted. You'll find that they start this behavior very, very early in life. So
I think it's also, when we're looking at a parental unit where money is the order of the day, the children's love is bought with money. Their affection is bought with money. The parent is not there to show love.
That's
and
true.
To be there. They might have an entourage of nannies and little butlers looking after them, cooking them whatever their heart desires, clicking their fingers, I want this, I want that. And everyone's running circles around the spoiled little brats because they know that if they don't please and appease the little brat, they're going to get fired. So they get brought up thinking everyone owes them something, So I think a lot of that stems from the fact that when people have too much money, they think that can also, like when we're looking at celebrities and these people with a lot of money, not just the celebrities. I mean, I know people I've worked with over the years. It's these little rich kids that have got the biggest problems in life because they've not learned how to connect emotionally. They've not learned how to save. They've not learned how to pay for your first car and have a rattle trap, to drive around in and have to actually pay for a tire, that sort of thing. So they very often, these are the people that get caught up in these narcissistic relationships. Yeah. And they know just how to play the game. I mean, they completely play it.
If I could be so bold, I think he's grown out of it mostly. I think he's really grown out of it, but this is only my personal opinion. And so I am not a licensed anything. This is my personal opinion. I think Prince Harry is a real example of this type of self-destructive BPD. I think he's grown out of a lot of it, but I think with him growing up and being the second, and going through everything that he did, his red fiery hair and everything, and he was very self-destructive for a while there. I don't know if you remember that he was in the newspaper like every other day. Constant stuff going on with him. But I think he's an example of one of that. And then our next one that we have, how we doing here? We have
we're doing petulant, the petulant,
Petulant, if you want to think of a toddler, if you want to think of very immature person. They're angry one moment, sad and sulky the next. They swing very unpredictably between one emotion and another. They may feel very unworthy, unloved. This can lead to relationship challenges. You're going to see a lot of divorce, and you'll see a string of divorces or failed relationships with Petulant BPD. They can be manipulative, but very, very often they're just dissatisfied with themselves and others. Some examples are irritability, a great sense of impatience, stubborn, defiant, they're passive aggressive, and they have severe mood swings. This person is very immature. They just never grew up. They got to a level of emotional growth, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they just stopped growing. And it's very difficult to make them happy. They cannot. Woo!
Like a petulant child, a sulking child that's pouting, and you just kind of got to like appease their needs. Otherwise, they're going to throw a tantrum, and and for the sake of peace, you'll appease them. So it's that kind of thing.
You cannot correct them. You cannot criticize them. They can't handle criticism of any type. And I've known quite a few petulant BPDs. They're very, very difficult to deal with. And it's all of the categories are difficult. All of them are difficult. But as far as having a relationship and wanting them to grow beyond it, it takes a lot for a petulant BPD to grow beyond emotionally. They really have to commit to the programs, to the dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive therapy. They really have to commit to it. But you can't get them to, because they're so irritable and impatient, and they're always complaining. They complain about everything. This is the person that calls you up and they're like, oh, mama. They just go on, and they are so unhappy with themselves in life.
Quite interesting from Emmy Black. Are personality disorders curable in the way schizophrenics can take medication and stop hearing voices? I just want to say, before I hand over to you there, Emmy, I've spoken about this before. If you read or listen to some stuff by Andrew Marzinski, he's actually a psychiatrist that worked with schizophrenics for many, many years. And the only reason why medication gets them to stop hearing voices for a short space in time is because it calms them down. But what he's discovered, and if you listen to his stuff, he's quite succinct about how he explains it, is that, again, in his experience, a lot of the schizophrenics he's worked with have all been horrifically sexually or violently abused as a child. And what they're saying, and what he's saying, is that there's actually some kind of attachment or entity that actually takes over a lot of that. And the reason why, and that's the voices they're hearing. Yeah. So the reason why the medication works and kind of calms that down is because when the person is calm, then those negative entities can't actually take hold, but they're always there in the background. So I think it's a very interesting person to listen to, because I think if we can understand these things more and more as people, as humans, even if we're not ourselves affected by it seriously, and we can all create change together, as far as I'm concerned, by knowing and understanding these things. So it's difficult to say. I mean, what's your take on our personality disorders curable, Alice?
Okay. Well, schizophrenia is completely a different animal. And I believe exactly what you said, Shanti, is that, it's almost, if you will, a demonic presence, a demonic possession over the person. And they can be very, very, very over-medicated, unfortunately, because people are afraid of schizophrenics. Well, people are afraid of borderlines too, but people are very afraid of schizophrenics because they will see, hear voices, and sometimes those voices, unfortunately, will tell them to do harm to others or such like that. And so they are very, very medicated. With borderline, can personality disorders be medicated? Yes and no. There is no medication for borderline personality disorder. None. What they treat is they treat the depression with an antidepressant. They'll treat obsessive compulsive disorder with a anxiety medication, or panic anxiety, PTSD, with an anxiety medication. So they will treat specific adjuncts of the personality traits with a specific drug that handles that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So they've got to find a concoction that works for you.
Exactly. Typically, borderlines can be on 4 to 5 medications at a time.
Wow.
That's
a lot of meds.
They don't have to take medication, but I've lived with medication and I've lived without medication. And I will tell you personally from my journey that I need to take the medication, because if I don't take the meds, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. My borderline disorder, it's a mixture of God coming into the picture too, because we're Christian. I'm just saying this, our family is Christian. And so I really use my faith a lot in my healing journey, in my healing walk. Okay. So that is one aspect of it that I do have, but I take the medications also because I know that they help me. Just, I'm trying to explain it in a way. Not everybody takes medication though. So, our last one that we have, Shanti, if you want to try to sneak it in there, do you think we could?
Yeah. Is the histrionic.
Right.
The histrionic, that's your separate to those 4 though, which you were saying goes hand in hand with borderline personality disorder. And you mentioned some celebrities such as Marilyn Monroe. I don't know who else you said that have actually suffered from this. I'm interested again because we all know, who's been watching this channel, how much celebrities are actually tampered with, and especially those women.
Lindsay Lohan.
Lindsay Lohan, yes.
I'm just trying. Britney Spears. Who's the other? Miley Cyrus. Histrionic is not borderline. It's the sister disease to borderline. That's what it is. And what they do is, despite their similarities, one of the biggest difference with histrionic versus borderline is people with histrionic are primarily motivated by a desire for attention, while those with BPD are primarily motivated by fear of abandonment and fear of rejection. So people with histrionics suffer with really low self-esteem. They're completely dependent on the approval of others. And these feelings give them an intense desire to be the center of attention. That's why you'll find a lot of actresses, they call them divas. They may engage in very dramatic, provocative, inappropriate behavior in an attempt to be noticed. And research shows that women are more likely to be diagnosed with histrionic personality disorder than men, although women are also more likely to come forward for treatment. So the symptoms are they experience discomfort when they're not the center of attention. They engage in very provocative or dramatic behavior. If you remember Marilyn Monroe singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President," very provocative.
That to me, again, it's totally, but that's like, if I'm listening to what you're saying, and again, especially with, as you say, these divas of the world, these are all kids that have started off in the system from a very young age, and they've all had sex magic done on them. They've all been trained in the system to be these little divas. So this to me, and I'm not saying every woman who has that is now a product of that, but it's just making a lot of sense that these famous women, and that would be, of course, the flip side of that. It sounds to me like this is a deliberate one.
Yeah, and you know that Marilyn Monroe, they say she committed suicide, but she did have problems with alcohol and drug addiction. And, you know, whether or not it's a conspiracy theory that she committed suicide or not, Judy Garland, there's so many, Barbara Streisand, but they have frequent mood swings, over the top displays of vicious emotion, seeking reassurance and validation from others, extreme sensitivity to criticism, impulsive behavior. They're easily influenced by others. They care deeply about their physical appearance, and they have a lack of concern for other people. And this is the huge one. They believe that relationship with others are closer than they actually are. That's a huge, they feel that they meet you and you are immediately locked in, you know, your friends, I trust you, I believe in you. And when actually the other person's like, you're freaking me out a little bit. They call it love bombing. Have you ever heard of
love bombing? I was going to say that's what it would be. It sounds like love bombing to the extreme, right?
Yes, to the extreme. Yeah. So that's who these women are, and men. There's men that have the same thing.
So it's like they would obviously be so desperate, you know, with the love bombing, really just want you to know how much they adore you so that you won't leave, right? So just, I'll give you anything, just stay, you know. And for the average person, that's absolutely too much, unless you're totally starved. So they're probably going to go for someone who's completely starved of love to begin with, right? So it's like, I just love you, please don't leave me. And then the minute that they start feeling threatened, or that fear of abandonment, right, starts setting in again, that's when you're going to get the violent behavior. So of course, again, they're going to do everything that they think a sexually desirable woman does when she's what a man wants in a woman. Now, again, that's part of their programming and their training when you're looking at the way that they treat these women in the system, right? That's that sex magic they use. It's these monarch, it's the monarch programming and all of that stuff. So they are trained to be these divas and these sexual goddesses doing things that I wouldn't even begin to imagine that someone would do on stage to begin with, right?
Well,
but then I'm wondering,
it's also when they switch from being an adolescent to growing into a grown woman. Like, look at Miley Cyrus, and not to pick on her, but she was young and cutesy, and she was in sitcoms, and she was, you know, singing and very, very, very successful. And then all of a sudden she's a grown woman. How did she still get that attention? She flipped and went totally sexual and histrionic.
Absolutely. And it would make sense, because obviously that would be the flip side of the programming that they've been through. Now, I'm wondering, is that part of that programming that they flip? It's very interesting to me. Because
her mentor is Madonna.
Hello, let's not even go there.
Her mentor is Madonna.
Is in the system, right?
Do we need to look any further? You know, you can see the progression of a child star, you know, flipping and going into that. And in the system, in the Hollywood system, they assign them mentors. And so I've heard some stories where at 12, 13, 14 years old, they're introduced to alcohol, they're introduced to drugs, they're introduced to sex. You know, they groom them. They groom them for this. And You know, so, and it's somebody like, I'll tell you who else is histrionic, Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And he never
What
grew
happened
up.
to that poor boy?
He never grew up. He never grew up. So, you know, you have these people, and the reason this needs to be out there is because people say, oh, you have BPD. You are white bread. No, there's rye bread, there's wheat bread, there's pumpernickel, you know, there's all different kinds. There's Italian loaf. There's all different kinds of borderline mental disorder. It's not just one blanket covering of BPD. You need to know what type your child, your parent, your sister, your brother, whoever it is, has.
Absolutely.
How can you treat
I
it?
apologize. That's Jerry Marzinski. I said Andrew Marzinski. You're right there.
Oh, Jerry Marzinski.
Yeah. Sanitarium Radio. That is Jerry Marzinski.
Emmy,
okay, we're just about out of time, guys. Sorry?
Emmy Black is asking a question. Alice, do you find it insulting that they call it a personality disorder? Sometimes I don't like when people ask me if I'm schizophrenic. I am not a schizophrenic. I'm a child of God. Yes. The labels, dear Emmy, are very stigmatizing. They're very demoralizing. They're not right. But if you had to say somebody has diabetes or heart disease, they wouldn't necessarily be ashamed of it. You know what I'm saying? So I guess we just have to face the fact that they're going to label us as something. And yes, I'm a child of God first, obviously.
Yeah. Just dealing with whatever it is we need to deal with on this earthly plane. And these are challenges. They're all, you know, I really believe nothing comes to us if we can't deal with it. And I do believe that there's a solution for every single thing. We just have to go within and find what your solution is.
Yep.
Okay. Psychiatry messed up. Yep. Great. Okay, guys. I think that is it for today. And I want to say thank you so much for everyone in our chat. Really appreciate you guys participating, questioning, you know, and just getting on the bandwagon here with us, just sharing this word and the space that there's nothing that one needs to be ashamed of. It's all just part and parcel of our journey and embracing who we are, really, at the end of the day.
Education is powerful.
Totally. Thank you so much, Alice, for joining me again. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. And I want to say thank you to all our beautiful guests and viewers. And thank you as I said again, for joining and questioning Alice. Alice's details are in the chat. Not the chat, sorry, in the description. So to get a hold of Alice on her email or her Telegram or whatever it might be, all the details are there. Reach out, get talking, join the community, as we know that to speak about it is really what is super.
Please feel free to email me. I am up to talking to anyone. I am not licensed. I am just a fellow sojourner. I'm just a fellow journey person with you. Like Shanti says, we're all just walking each other home, you know?
Yeah.
So Shanti, thank you so much. Thank you for having, you know, a platform we can open these topics to. And
yeah, absolutely.
So
and guys, share, you know, share the stuff. These are important topics that we're going to be, you know, that we cover here. Good. Okie dokie. Thank you so much. And I am back in the back room to see if I can do this again.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.